September 14th, 1933. The Cotton Club, Harlem, 11:47 p.m. The room smelled like cigarette smoke, cheap cologne, and ambition. Lucky Luciano sat with his back to the wall, always with his back to the wall, nursing a glass of bourbon he hadn't actually touched. Across the table sat two men sent by Owney Madden, the Irish gangster who ran Hell's Kitchen like a private kingdom. This was supposed to be a negotiation. Bootlegging territories, distribution routes through the West Side, civilized business between men who understood power. It almost stayed that way. The sentence Lucky was speaking never finished. A hand the size of a dinner plate closed around his collar. That hand belonged to Roy "Brick" Callahan, 6'4", 260 pounds of pure menace wrapped in a pinstripe vest. Owney Madden's personal enforcer, his shadow, the man who broke three men's jaws in a single evening when someone tried to rob one of Madden's shipments, and then smiled while doing it. Brick Callahan had a reputation that traveled faster than he did, and right now, both of his reputation and his fist were wrapped around Lucky Luciano's collar. He lifted. Lucky's shoes left the floor by 4 inches. When Mr. Missed, "Madden's men are talking," Brick said, his voice a low Queen's growl. "You wait your turn." The Cotton Club froze. The trumpet player hit a wrong note and stopped. Cocktail glasses paused halfway to lips. 50 people watched in complete silence as one of the most powerful men in organized crime dangled like laundry at the end of an Irishman's fist. Meyer Lansky was on his feet before the music died, hand inside his jacket. Across the table, Madden's 2 representatives had already drawn, one aimed at Meyer, one aimed at the bodyguards standing by the entrance. A Mexican standoff assembled itself in seconds, the way it always did in rooms where everyone was already armed and already nervous. Lucky raised his left hand slowly. Just that. Palm out. Wait. Nobody fired. Lucky looked at Brick Callahan, looked directly into eyes that had watched men break, eyes that fed on the specific flavor of fear that came with absolute physical dominance, eyes that were waiting, eager, for the panic to appear on Lucky's face. It didn't come. "Put me down, Roy," Lucky said. Quiet, almost bored. The voice of a man asking a cab driver to pull over. Brick's grip tightened. "Say please, I'm going to say something better," Lucky replied. "I'm going to say, you've got 10 seconds. After that, my people make a decision I can't take back. And your boss loses the only man in this city dumb enough to work for him." From the end of the table, Owney Madden's voice came through like a crack in ice. "Roy, enough." A pause, long enough to make a point, long enough for everyone in the room to see that Brick was releasing Lucky on his own terms, not Lucky's. Lucky's feet touched the floor. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his collar, sat back down with the unhurried precision of a man who had never been anything but in control. He looked at Owney Madden's men. "We done for tonight?" "We're done," one of them said. Lucky nodded once, stood, and walked out of the Cotton Club with Meyer at his left shoulder, 2 bodyguards trailing behind. He didn't look back, didn't walk fast, didn't say a word until the door closed and the cold Harlem air hit his face. In the car, Meyer spoke first. "Charlie, I know. 50 witnesses." "I know, Meyer." "We have to. We will," Lucky said. He was staring out the window at the city scrolling past. "Just not tonight. Here is what you need to understand about what just happened. Roy Callahan didn't just grab a man, he grabbed a symbol. Lucky Luciano wasn't just building a criminal organization, he was building the commission, a structure that would end the wars, regulate the violence, turn chaos into something that functioned like a government. And the entire architecture of that system depended on one thing: respect. Not fear, not guns. Respect. The understood agreement between powerful men that certain lines don't get crossed, that you negotiate before you threaten, that you don't put your hands on a man of standing in a room full of witnesses. Brick Callahan had just crossed every one of those lines simultaneously, and he'd done it in front of 50 people who would talk. By the next morning, the story was moving through Manhattan like a fever. By afternoon, it had crossed borough lines. By evening, Roy "Brick" Callahan was at his regular table at a bar in Queens, 4 drinks deep, telling the story himself. "He just hangs there," Brick said, laughing now, his audience leaning in. "Freed off the ground, Lucky Luciano. They call him the boss of bosses, and he's looking at me like a kid who dropped his lunch money. Tells me to put him down, all soft, like I'm going to listen. Laughter, more drinks. Someone bought around. Nobody said out loud what a few of them were already thinking, that no man who built what Lucky Luciano built ever forgot anything. That walking away from a fight was not the same as losing one. That the only thing more dangerous than Lucky angry was Lucky quiet. Brick celebrated for 3 days. On the fourth morning, he stopped. September 17th, 1933, West 52nd Street, 7014 a.m. The routine was always the same. Brick Callahan left his building, walked 3 blocks to a diner, ate a full breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee black, read the sports section, and then made his way to Madden's headquarters. He'd been doing it for 4 years. Routine was comfort. Routine was safety. He made it 1.5 blocks. The black Packard slid to the curb so smoothly it seemed to appear from nowhere. The rear window rolled down. Meyer Lansky looked at him from the back seat. No expression, no anger, just that quiet analyst's gaze, the one that made men more nervous than a weapon. "Get in, Roy." Brick's hand moved to his waistband, he always carried, always. But 3 men stepped from doorways simultaneously. In front, beside, behind, all armed, all watching him with the specific patience of men who had done this before and didn't find it exciting anymore. "Where are we going?" Brick asked. "For a drive," Meyer said. They drove to Red Hook, to a warehouse near the water that smelled like salt and machine oil, empty except for 1 chair in the center of the floor, bolted down, and Albert Anastasia standing next to it with the calm expression of a man who loved his work. "Sit down, Roy," Albert said. Brick sat. They tied him. Wrists to the chair arms, ankles to the legs, a rope across his chest. Professional. Efficient. The knots of men who'd had practice. And then they did something Brick didn't expect. They left him alone. No threats, no beatings, no explanation. Just the warehouse, the empty space, the sound of water somewhere outside, and Brick's own mind doing what minds do in silence, filling the void with every terrible possibility. He sat there for 90 minutes. At 9:03 a.m., the warehouse door opened. Lucky Luciano walked in wearing a gray suit, hands in his pockets, moving like he had nowhere better to be and all the time in the world to get there. He crossed the concrete floor and stopped 5 feet from the chair. Looked at Brick. "You know why you're here," he said. It wasn't a question. Brick said nothing. "3 days ago, you put your hands on me," Lucky continued. His voice was the same voice he'd used at the Cotton Club. Calm, almost gentle. Like a teacher explaining something simple to a slow student. In front of witnesses, lifted me out of my chair, made me look like I couldn't stop you. "Your people pull guns," Brick said. His voice was steady. He was still reaching for the toughness, still finding the edges of it. "My people did what they were supposed to do. You did something you chose to do. That's the difference." Lucky walked closer, stood directly in front of the chair, and looked down. "Here's what I want you to understand, Roy. I'm not angry." Brick blinked. "I'm not angry," Lucky repeated. "Anger is for men who didn't see it coming. I saw it coming the minute you walked in the room. Men like you always do it eventually. It's the only move you know." "Then what is this?" Brick asked. He looked at the ropes, at Albert, at the equipment against the far wall. "This is a conversation," Lucky said, "about what happens next." He pulled a chair over, sat down facing Brick, eye level, close enough that Brick could see that there was genuinely nothing behind Lucky's eyes except calculation. No hatred, no excitement. The expression of a man doing arithmetic. "You're going to leave New York," Lucky said. Brick stared at him. "Tonight. You're going to tell Owney you've got family trouble, health problems, whatever story you like, but you're leaving. And you're not coming back. You're not going to." Brick glanced at Albert again. "Hurt you?" Lucky tilted his head slightly. "Roy, if I wanted to hurt you, we wouldn't be talking. If I wanted you in the river, Meyer would have given the order in the car." A small pause. "I want something more useful than that." "What?" Lucky leaned forward slightly. "I want the story. The one that travels. Every man who saw you grab me 3 days ago, I want them to hear what happened after. I want them to know that Big Brick Callahan, The man who put his hands on Lucky Luciano ended up tied to a chair in Red Hook while Lucky sat across from him and told him to run. And that Brick ran. "I'm not running," Brick said. But his jaw was tight. His breathing had changed. "Not yet," Albert offered from the corner. Lucky didn't blink. "Here's what fear actually looks like, Roy. Not the moment when someone grabs you. That's just surprise. Real fear is sitting where you're sitting right now, realizing that the man across from you isn't emotional about this, isn't angry, just knows exactly what he's doing and exactly how it ends. That's what everyone is going to know happened here. And that knowledge is going to do more work for me than you dead ever could." Brick's hands flexed against the ropes. "Please." The word came out quiet. Lucky paused. "Say that again." The silence lasted 3 full seconds. "Please," Brick said, and his voice broke on it. "Just slightly, just enough. My reputation. Everything I've built." "Please don't." "Your reputation," Lucky said slowly, "is the message. It's already written. The only question left is whether you're in New York when people hear it or somewhere safe." A long silence. "Where?" Brick asked finally. "I don't care. Boston, Baltimore. Go west. Pick a city where nobody knows your name and start over." "For how long?" "Forever, Roy. You don't come back. Not for Owney, not for anything." "You understand what forever means." Brick looked at the floor. He nodded. "Cut him loose," Lucky said. Albert cut the ropes. Brick stood on unsteady legs, rubbing his wrists. He was 6'4" and 260 pounds, and he looked smaller than the chair. "Midnight," Lucky said, already walking toward the door. "After that, it's not a conversation." Roy Brick Callahan was on a train to Philadelphia by 6 p.m. He never came back. The story reached Owney Madden before sundown. His best man, his enforcer, the toughest body in Hell's Kitchen, scared out of the city by an hour in a chair and a quiet conversation with a man who never raised his voice. Madden called Lucky the next day. "I heard," Madden said. "Good," Lucky replied. "That was a message. Every move is a message, Owney. The question is whether you're reading it or writing it." Silence on a line. "The territories," Madden said finally. "Let's finish the negotiation." "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." They agreed. The boundaries held. The war that could have started that night in the Cotton Club never happened, and no one, not Madden's people, not anyone in the 5 boroughs, put hands on Lucky Luciano again. Years later, someone asked Albert Anastasia the obvious question, why not just kill him? Albert thought about it for a moment. Because a dead tough guy is just a cautionary tale. A tough guy who begged and ran, that's a legend. Every other enforcer in the city heard that story and did the math. And the math said, don't touch Charlie. It's not worth it. Not the touch. Not what comes after. Did it work? Albert smiled slowly. Did anyone else try it? No answer needed. If this story showed you what real power actually looks like, hit subscribe. We're telling the stories where intelligence outlasted violence, where patience beat fists, where one calculated silence echoed louder than a gunshot. Turn on notifications. Lucky Luciano never wasted a move. Drop a comment. Would you have kept Brick in New York or let him run? Lucky Luciano, 1897. The man who turned disrespect into disappearance. The boss who made an example without pulling a trigger. Rest in power.